screen up, and we're also going to see if we can get these lights down, just so it's a little bit easier, because some of these are pretty cool images I want to make sure you all get to see. So first off, I want to thank Lindsay for producing this event and for bringing together a lot of people and for kind of reactivating the Mensa group for Los Angeles. Thanks, Mark. And I also want to personally thank all of you for coming to this event. I hope you get a chance to meet each other and new friendships and all those kinds of things. And if we can get the other side up, that would be really...
I'm working on that, John.
You're working on it. All right, so everybody look over here. All right. So what I want to really do tonight is share with you some information about our growing private space enterprise tourism industry. And then later on talk about one of the projects I'm working on called Mars World, because we're beginning to get feedback from the public on the Mars World project. But ultimately what I hope happens, because there's a lot of talent and capabilities here, is that more and more of you want to begin to engage through your own talents and ideas and experience in our growing private space enterprise tourism industries. And believe me, please, it's not just about engineers or aerospace. There's a growing diversity of people involved and engaged in making meaningful contributions to this growing industry. And a lot of us involved in the space industry really deeply believe that a thriving space industry is an important part of creating a peaceful and healthy future for all mankind. We really think it's a very important thing. So we need the brightest and the bravest to get involved and bring your creativity to the whole thing. This presentation, as I mentioned, has two parts. The first one's on the space experience economy. The second one's on Mars World. And I just love this quote. I always want to start off with this because I firmly, deeply believe in this, that the best way to predict the future is to invent it. And if you really think about it, we're all inventing our own futures every single day. And if we collectively work together and come up with bright ideas and move projects forward, we're creating a more collective powerhouse. So, now here's something I'd like to show. This is great. I'm sure everybody's here has seen the movie 2001, or most people have seen the movie 2001. It came out in 1968. That's a year before the Apollo 11 landed on the moon, so almost 50 years ago. But what's great about this is a movie poster of it. And of course, these astronauts are working, and look what they have. Isn't that interesting? There are so many examples of science fiction, from Jules Verne's day to Walt Disney's Man in Space to 2001 and other movies, where science fiction will talk about the future, and someday some of that comes true. So always keep in mind, it's amazing how many creative things can happen that actually happen. Now I'm going to show you some fairly out there stuff. So I want you to please read this. I'm sure many of you have experienced this yourself. My whole life has been this way, where I'll come up with something pretty out there, and we go through these whole stages and stuff. What I've learned over the years is try to compress the stages a little bit by being more logical and team building and all those things. But just keep this in mind. Keep the laughter down. But this is one of my projects I've been working on for years. It's actually a design of a real orbital superyacht that would be assembled in Earth orbit for the same reasons that ocean-going super and mega yachts exist, for pride and prestige, social standing. And my goal with this design was to create a beautiful spaceship and to begin to break down the paradigms that space and spaceships are hard-edged and clunky and kind of ugly. Because we want to get more and more people to go to space, to have those wonderful space experiences. And if we can get these immensely wealthy people to go, and they have this kind of overview effect experience, then maybe they'll migrate some of their resources and talent to building that space infrastructure that helps humanity move outward. Great, screen's coming down. So, this is the space experience part. So this is my main point, that we that are involved in this are in the space experience business. And I define this in a fairly broad perspective, these three areas of this triangle. There's real space flight, there's Earth-based simulations, like a space camp or say a Mars World or a National Space Museum, and then there's movies and TVs and games. And these three mediums that people experience space are synergistic, they help each other. The majority of people, of course, experience space through the movies and TV. Then the next level up, and it's many millions around the world, actually physically go to space places. And then there's the real space flight. What's nice for our growing industry is that over time, if someone's into this theme, they're into the space experience. And it's an evergreen theme. In other words, there's millions of people interested, but it's a little theme. You can go through ever increasingly real space experiences. They become more real, they become more expensive, they take more time, they're more dangerous, leading to real space experiences. So that means you have an industry that can grow and you can have a large-scale, diverse market. And these are those experiences: real, suborbital, zero gravity, immersive simulations, virtual worlds. And again, this means that people from a huge array of disciplines can be involved in these, whether you're a fashion designer, or you're an engineer, or you're an investment banker. You can be involved in a whole range of space-related experiences. Now, these lucky people actually have had space experiences. They're the first space tourists. From our friend Dennis Tito in 2001, leading up to Guy in 2009. He's the founder of Circus LA. Charles Simonyi, he flew twice, he liked it so much. Now, these people physically wrote the check. They actually wire transferred it. But millions and millions of dollars. Dennis spent about 10 million and Guy spent about 45. So the price actually went up because they had an exclusive market. The Russians so far have been the best space capitalists, or we call them space cowboys. They all had the exact same type of experience. They take off from Kazakhstan, a Russian rocket capsule, spend 10 to 12 days on the International Space Station, and return on a capsule. And every one of them had a life-changing, wonderful experience doing it. But what is that experience? What is the space experience? Well, first off, it's obviously taking a great amount of your time looking out at the Earth. We have a very beautiful planet. Lots of photographs. Dennis Tito took 35 rolls of film, actually, pictures. Get a sunset or sunrise every 45 minutes. And of course, the most unique part is floating in zero gravity. And that's something you'll see later on in the presentation, lots of ideas on how to do that. That's pretty interesting. Take a space float. I always hate that term spacewalk. You never walk in space, unless you're on the moon or Mars. Romance in space, that's something we really absolutely have to pioneer. It's important. An American needs to be first. Lunar flyby. Our friends at Space Adventures actually have sold one ticket for $150 million to date. They are about to sell the second ticket for $150 million. And 2 passengers and 1 Russian cosmonaut will actually do a flyby of the moon within the next 3 years. And we will witness the first Earthrise live since the Apollo era. And I think this is one of the most important photographs in human history because it helped humanity realize that Earth is a place. It's our place because there was a frame of reference, the rim of the moon. And of course, someday we're going to have lunar resorts and spas and golfing. They actually already did golfing on the moon, Alan Shepard. And this here, let's take a little bit of time and look at this because this is maybe the most important page, slide in this presentation. Because there is a reality to what I'm talking about. And that is we've got at least 10 billionaires who have invested their time, reputation, and money in starting or investing in space enterprise tourism companies. There's actually 4 more, but I haven't felt like redoing this slide, and you wouldn't know their names anyway. But just think about it. Some of these are some of the wealthiest people in the world. Some of them have actually invented whole industries that have changed the world. And one of their common connection is their love and interest in space and space enterprise. And the reason they're doing this is not to make money, although they'd probably like to. It's because they believe it's important and it's exciting, vibrant challenge. And that's key to what they want to do, is meet other people who are challenged by this and to do something very special in life. So Paul Allen, Elon Musk, Branson, there's this kind of space mafia which is actually growing. It's very interesting. So Paul Allen, they're just finished, literally, building the world's largest aircraft. It's like 2 747s connected together and going to be dropping rockets from 35 to 45,000 feet up. So you're through most of the atmosphere. And what's really important is they can take off and land from large airports near the equator, which has a lot of technical and economic advantages. How many people have heard of Elon Musk SpaceX? Yeah, okay. So this is a local company down in Hawthorne, and they're building rockets and flying rockets, and Elon in September is going to make an announcement which is going to have a positive effect on our Mars World project, on his real Mars colonization planning and programming. That's going to be very interesting. But 15 years ago, no one thought a private enterprise company could, in fact, design and build a rocket, manufacture it, launch it, operate it, and no one ever thought in a million years NASA would let their capsule get anywhere near the space station. And now it's routine for them to dock at the space station with supplies and take trash away. Another company does the same thing, but SpaceX is the most famous. Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is by far the richest guy involved in space. And he has a long-term program of developing reusable rockets just like SpaceX is. And he most likely will be the first group to provide private space tourism to suborbit. They've also got these giant windows, the largest windows in space. And he has been launching rockets and landing them, and the capsule floats down, as you can see in this mission profile. And they continue to do that on an accelerated basis, and probably within 2 years we'll have the first suborbital space experiences. Bob Bigelow from Bigelow Aerospace is a friend of ours. He's on our board of directors for Space Tourism Society. And he's developing the first space hotel in space. And these are inflatable structures, all connected. They come up, compress, they inflate in space, and connect to a hard node. And he's got 2 of these half-scale in orbit right now with the test. And this was, a few months ago, attached to the International Space Station. It's a real inflatable module that the crew members can go inside. So that is a giant breakthrough that NASA let them do that, but also they really have a solid test bed connected to the space station to test out different materials and capabilities. I was not involved in any of the design of any of these interiors, but I was very involved in the early days in the 2002 and 3 with Bob Bigelow, and got him involved in inflatable structures. So this is pretty amazing. You know, I'm sure you've all heard of Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic. They'll hopefully be flying within 3 to 4 years. Part of what I'm doing is showing you the wide variety of space enterprise and activities going on to show that there's many ways of getting involved in this. Our friends at X-Corps, they're having a bit of a different approach to doing space tourism to suborbit with just a pilot and 1 passenger. They're up in the cockpit. The Russians are working on their space hotel venture. They're making some pretty good progress. These are the new kids on the block, Planetary Resource, about 3 years old, but they have some mega bucks behind them from the Google founders and other people. Jim Cameron's involved, Charles Simone's invested in it. And they're doing 2 things. They're developing the technology for mining asteroids and eventually the moon, which is critical in the long-term big picture development of space because you can access water in space. And water is a key driver and economic resource in terms of developing space habitats of large scale and eventually space tourism. The second thing they're doing is they're testing the legal regimes of owning extraterrestrial material. Unfortunately, Congress has passed a bill recently allowing people to actually mine the moon and asteroids and keep and process and sell the material. So the regulatory activities that are happening are complementing the technical activities and complementing the economic activities, and these are moving things forward in a fairly balanced way. So the space experience economy is growing pretty well on all fronts. This, I just recently added this to show you, you don't have to be a billionaire to start a space business. Some young guys started this idea of a CubeSats. Professors had the original idea, and a young company started to put CubeSats, and they're only about this big by that big by this big. And there's been 300 of these flown. They're mostly from universities or research laboratories. But you can actually, people in this room could put some money together, develop a CubeSat that will be flown for very low cost and do real science in space. That's never before happened. And that's widened the potential of universities and people getting involved and coming up with great ideas. The CubeSat itself was a great idea just 5 or 6 years ago. And how many people here heard of Made in Space, the company? Well, that's a pretty good number. Young guys came up with this idea of flying a 3D printer up to the International Space Station and learning how to do 3D printing in zero gravity. And they've done it. It's on board the space station. They've been actually printing out these simple tools. And this happens to be one of those enabling capabilities and technologies that none of us involved in this industry 10 years ago had even thought of. But it's an enormous mission enhancement capability system because you can print tools, you can print devices, you can print parts in space on board the space station, especially on long duration missions to Mars and on Mars. So you never know when someone's going to come up with an amazing idea that really advances everything. More and more media-oriented companies are seeing space as a way of advertising their brands. I'm sure most of you heard of Red Bull. They did their skydive from the edge of space. It was a great promotional tool for them. They were really happy. They spent $40 million. They got over $200 million in advertising value. And we also have, of course, our unmanned missions going on. Curiosity has been doing fantastic science on Mars for years, about 4 years. And we have the second version of this going up in 2020, and there's a fleet of spaceships from different countries going to Mars. Mars is the star of the future.
Is that a Pokemon there?
Almost. That is Lisa Light will like this. Yeah, I'll tweet. This actually has about 10 million followers, the Curiosity, for tweeting and there's so much going on that a number of us over years have been talking about the need eventually, as part of the space infrastructure, for a Space Guard kind of service, modeled after the United States Space Guard service, modeled after the United States Coast Guard. We need a Space Guard service. And people are actually working on that, and the Coast Guard would like to be very involved in it. They've flown 2 people from their service as astronauts, and they want to extend their range of influence beyond Earth. So things are happening now from different quarters. Many of them themselves never thought they'd be even near space, let alone involved in space infrastructure and space development. Spaceports, these are facilities on Earth where vehicles are built, assembled, and maintained. There's 35 of these around the world, and there's 6 under development right now. So the Earth-based infrastructure for space utilization is growing at an accelerating rate. We have a mini spaceport, Mojave Air Spaceport, one in New Mexico. This is actually a terminal building I came up with the idea for to convince the governor's office to fund a little bit of money for it. And that's my design for a spaceport terminal at the Mojave Air Spaceport. And we almost got it on the ballot the last time around, but we're going to try to for next time. But again, for architects or designers, there's lots of work evolving right now. I mean, even SpaceX is hiring architects and engineers and interior designers all the time to expand their facilities and factories. And of course, space-themed entertainment is growing, not just the work we're doing, but there's many more pavilions. The California Science Center is going to be building a $250 million pavilion and having a space shuttle, a real space shuttle with a real internal tank and rocket boosters on the sides vertical, so you'll be able to go down there within 5 years and see our real space shuttle, the Endeavour. But space-themed immersive experiences is going to be a big business in parallel to the real space experiences in the movies and TV. So let's spend some time with the orbital super yacht. Okay. When there's enough pride and prestige and publicity, pretty much so anything can be accomplished. So keep that in mind. This is an amazing ship. It's been superseded now, the largest private yacht on Earth. And $1.1 billion. The Saudi prince launched one last year for $1.6 billion, bigger. And these are amazing designs, amazing technologies, amazing capabilities. And this is the one I actually modeled that super yacht we talked about earlier after one of Paul Allen's. A couple of these guys are so big they actually have 2 heliports. So they have to have fun going. They do this, but it's inevitable when they do this. But what I want to do, and what I enjoy doing, is designing orbital super yachts and all these space future things. But I want to migrate some of this vast wealth and capabilities to the space community for the development of space infrastructure and humanity moving outward. And I think I'm going to be able to do it with the help of many, many people. in this process, the idea of orbital super yachts, modeled after ocean-going mega and super yachts, for the same reason that Pride, Prestige, and Sulso stand. So this is my concept design of Destiny. That's that orbital super yacht. That's about 300 foot long. It's all inflatable structures brought into space, fused together. The sails, the 4 of them, collect solar energy, migrate them to charging stations. This is for 10 passengers, 6 human crew members, telepresence people on the ground actually operating some things, and well over 100 little robots run around doing that kind of stuff. And the goal, again, was to create a beautiful spaceship that actually can be built. This is probably about $5 billion. And here's a fun thing I'll share with you. I have a great scheme for going to space myself. Okay. So my scheme is over the next 20 years or so, convince these billionaire guys and huge corporations, that they absolutely must have their orbital super yacht. They just have to have it. And then get into the design and the engineering and the development and then actually get this built. And then I have to go to space to do a job inspection. So I get paid to go to space. And isn't that a great scheme? I mean, that is a really good scheme. I love it. And there's going to be all these crew members that do this, going out and working in space. Oh, let me go back for a second. Almost in the middle of this ship is this sphere. It's 60 foot in diameter. It's called the float sphere. And what I want to do is capitalize on the most unique aspect of going to space, that's zero gravity. So this is basically the float sphere. It's just a giant open volume. And on the big super yachts and mega yachts, of course, the hot tub is one of the most popular areas, particularly in Europe. Young people here, so I won't mention why. So this is my design concept for the hot sphere in zero gravity. Any fluid in zero gravity will form a sphere because there isn't gravity to push it down, right? So you can imagine crew members taking this thing here, the darker part, expanding that when they get into the float sphere. That has gyros in it and has other kind of stuff, and the bubble making machine and the heater. Then other robots come out, put the water around, the water will stick around the whole thing. And then you basically have your hot tub in space. And your little robots are bringing you your drinks and all that. I got to tell you, I had an absolute blast creating this and designing it. And what I like to do is explore what I call exploring the design frontier. Because you can explore design like you're exploring a planet or underwater. But this was a really fun challenge to ask yourself a question. Gee whiz, how would I have a hot tub in zero gravity? And that was a wonderful experience and voyage of designing and stuff. And Destiny and these other things create great opportunities to explore the design areas. Great areas. Now imagine having a wedding in that big float sphere. You know, so you got the captain performing the wedding, you got all your friends holding arms floating around you. Only problem is she seems like a kind of nice girl. We don't think she should really marry that guy. I just look at him. And this is going to go bad. It's really going to go bad. And of course, you know, spending time in your private cabin. And ultimately, one of the key things a lot of us talk about is going outward gives us the opportunity to go inward also, to get that perspective of what does it all mean, like the Earthrise image and so forth. So besides industry and science and sports and space and tourism, that whole ability to go outward and to think about what does this all mean, space provides a unique perspective to doing that. Here's one of my fun projects I like to do. Take a second to read that. Now, Red Bull is not directly involved in this right now, but just imagine actually hosting a manned rover race around the entire moon, around the equator. Now, this is an outrageous concept, right? But 25 years ago, space tourism was an outrageous concept. A decade ago, private company building and launching rockets was an outrageous concept. And that's what we specialize in, outrageous concepts that had the ability over long periods of time to logically make them happen. I'm pretty sure this will happen. I'm very sure the yacht will happen. And the reason is always follow the money or follow the motivation. The money for this race is they spend billions of dollars on Formula One on Earth. And that's all because of the pride and prestige and the advertising and marketing and so forth. So spending, say, 10, 15 billion on Race Around the Moon, where almost everyone on Earth is going to know about it, is really something that could happen over time. And you'd have to have hundreds of people on the moon to support this. So you'd have to design and build infrastructure that eventually becomes more people coming to the moon, and more people coming to the moon, and the second race, and then the third race becomes bigger. So there are strategies that we can tap into, knowing of existing industries, that can be used to move space experiences forward. So we're in the space experience business. And again, the best way to predict the future is to invent. All right? Now, I want to stop and take a couple minutes, and you guys can look at this. I wish this was bigger, but there are many different foundations and groups and societies to get involved with if you want to. I'm happy to introduce any of you to some of these groups, or you can get involved with Space Tourism Society. But before we do the next segment, it's only a much smaller presentation on Mars World. Anybody have questions, comments? Paul.
Fantastic presentation, John.
Thanks.
What do we do about space debris?
It's an important point. There are tens of thousands of little objects in space, any one of which could ruin your whole day. The bigger ones the size of your fist are tracked by groups that track that. Many of these things over time will decay into orbit and come down, and we're trying not to create more space junk. But it is one of those infrastructure problems that some people can make gazillions of dollars on, and there are companies that have been formed to go after the space junk, to vacuuming it up, to connect it together, and then basically bring it down to Earth. So it is one of those problems. There's more legal issues to be dealt with. Are we going to have space lanes like we have sea lanes? Do we have this Space Guard service? Do we standardize airlocks so one vehicle can go and connect with another one when there's an emergency? So there's a huge amount of space law and treaty issues and stuff dealing with space junk, as well as technology and energy. I was involved in helping to launch, and unfortunately it didn't work out over time, PayPal Galactic. President of PayPal wanted to have a pay service off-world. And there's a lot of issues on how do you do transactions off-world. A lot, more than you might think. So space junk is a real issue, but people, whenever there's a problem, people can make money solving it. And that's a real problem. Any more questions? Please.
Didn't I see that the FAA granted a commercial space license to Virgin Galactic?
They've had a preliminary license for 4 years. Because Virgin Galactic lost its test spaceship and the co-pilot, the regulatory issues are going to get a little stronger, and they should. But fortunately, the federal government and world governments have actually been pretty good, I'll have to say pretty good, on listening and helping to help create this new industry, because there's money to be made and prestige to be gained. So, and there's a lot of smart space lawyers and people actually working on all these issues. But that's it. But actually, who's really going to really get all the licensing done first in certain areas is Jeff Bezos, because he has a rocket that has a much better survivability capability. A few more questions? You guys got to have questions.
Could you do your space hot tub, the floating sphere, could you prototype that on a zero gravity flight and get a small one floating with water stuck to it?
They've done that quite a bit.
They have.
Fluid dynamics, they've done all kinds of stuff. And of course, people going up doing that also blow water out just to see it float around, have fun, throw water at each other. But you really need long-term zero gravity to have the experience. All right. Allison?
John, why don't you address your whole notion of Earth-based space experiences before the Mars World issue, but just in general, the philosophy about that.
Okay. For decades, there have been Earth-based space experiences. Usually start at Walt Disney at Tomorrowland, trip to the moon, then eventually trip to Mars. There are all the NASA centers, National Space Museum, Space Camp. 14.6 million people in the United States every year get up and physically go to space facilities, counting the National Space Museum, and it's about 22 million around the world. That's not counting science centers, where it's 130 million around the world of people that get up and go to the science centers. So there has been a lot of cooperation and synergy between Earth-based experiences, education, as well as tourism and fun, as well, that complements the real space experience. And Walt Disney, one of my great heroes, was a great advocate of our real space program. Without him, we might not have had the Apollo program. And I can tell you, get into that in great detail if anyone would like to.